Thank you, welcome. I'm Father Mitch. Welcome to EWTN Live, where we bring you guests from around the world. Our guest tonight is a fellow Jesuit priest. He has taught college students around the country about faith and reason, metaphysics, the philosophy of God, the philosophy of science. He's the president of one of the largest science-based Catholic apologetics institutes in the world. It's called the Magus Center of Reason and Faith. He's also the author of the database for the Magus AI app, which you can download for free. It's a good price from the App Store on your phones. He also appears weekly on the EWTN series Father Spitzer's Universe with Doug Keck, and he's written many books, one of which we'll talk about tonight, called Christ, Science, and Reason, What We Can Know About Jesus, Mary, and Miracles. So please welcome tonight's guest, Father Robert Spitzer of the Society of Jesus. Father,
hey,
good to see you.
Thanks so much, Mitch.
Good to have
Father
you
Mitch,
here.
it's great to be here with you.
Thank you, thank you. And, you know, this is a great topic, but why did you write about Christ and science and reason? You know, isn't faith something that has nothing to do with science? It's just the world of faith, then you have the world of science?
Well, there is a world of faith, but it doesn't preclude reason and science. We are not like, let's say, the Kierkegaardian school. Kierkegaard was a famous Protestant philosopher who really believed what you were just suggesting. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to jump over an infinite gully to sort of, in this leap of faith, as he called it, to get to God. We take the approach of St. Thomas Aquinas. In his day, it didn't occur like we do today with natural sciences as we know them today, but what St. Thomas suggested is you build a bridge of reason as far as you can go over this chasm. And then, you know, there's a little ways to go, and you are going to have to take a leap of faith in a sense. You're going to have to open yourself to God. You're going to have to want, the result that God exists. You can't just say, I'm not going to ever be open to the existence of God. So, but with a kind of almost a minimal desire in your heart, and with the will to want to be responsible to a moral agency outside of yourself, you can sort of, boom, get to the other side. Mm-hmm. We can always get to what's called reasonable and responsible belief, right? Mm-hmm. And reasonable and responsible belief is not like the certitude you get from a metaphysical proof of God. You can prove very, very well the existence of a unique, unrestricted, unconditioned, that is to say, uncaused being that exists through itself and is a constant creator of everything else it is. Mm-hmm. Just on the Magus AI app, you can get 4 of those proofs just like that, that are called metaphysical proofs of God. What science can do is science can actually bring you closer to the notion of God. For example, this book, of course, pertains to Christ, but my previous book, Science at the Doorstep to God, looks, for example, at near-death experience studies and looks at terminal lucidity studies. These are scientific medical studies in peer-reviewed journals that show that there's a high likelihood that there is not only life after death, that consciousness will survive your bodily death, but also that the afterlife has a dimension of heaven and in some cases of hell. Mm-hmm. About 80% have a heavenly experience, the 20% have a dark or hellish experience. Also, you can put together a very good rationale for why we have to have a transphysical soul and why AI, for example, will never be able to get to, self-consciousness of a human being, abstract intellection of a human being, or for that matter, transcendental awareness and desire, moral conscience, and so forth and so on. You can actually show this by good philosophical evidence, and science really comes in by showing the need for a creator. So we have a pretty good idea right now that even if there were a multiverse, and a multiverse is like a super mega universe that's coughing out little bubble universes all the time. Do we know whether one exists or not? No. Is it possible in the, with quantum cosmology and inflationary theory? Yes. But even Stephen Hawking in 2018, very impressive and important physicist, he and his partner Thomas Hertog show almost assuredly, because of what's called the LISA and LIGO gravitational wave detectors, show that any multiverse which could have produced our universe would itself have to have a creator, would have to have a beginning, because eternal inflation would have produced a very, very chaotic universe. In other words, any eternally inflating multiverse, which was a thought for a long time, would create only chaotic universes, and our universe would be chaotic along those lines. The problem, of course, is, as Hawking notices, we had an exceedingly smooth exit from inflation. And so he names this article, and the usual physics humor, a smooth exit from eternal inflation. And what he meant by that is, essentially, our universe not only needs a creator, but even if there were a multiverse, which we have by no means proved, it too would need a creator, because it too would have to have a beginning, because eternal inflation could not give rise to anything like our very smooth and non-fractal universe. So these things, they're all there. And I wrote this book about God, because fine-tuning coincidences and the evidence for a creation, even of a multiverse, all these things, life after death, the transphysical soul, from science have been really very well established. In 2020, the New York Academy of Sciences, as I said, actually declared that there was a very credible possibility that your consciousness would survive bodily death based on peer-reviewed medical studies of near-death experiences and terminal lucidity. So that part was covered very well. What you can't do with the scientific approach to God is you really can't answer the questions of who God is. In other words, you can say God is a unique being, and you can prove it. He's an unrestricted being. You can prove that. He's an uncaused or unconditioned being, and you can prove that. He's a being that exists through itself. You can prove that. And he's a constant creator of everything else in reality. You can prove that. But once you hit that, you've got a lot of whats. And you've got a lot of that God exists, that this kind of a being exists. But who is he? Does he redeem suffering? Is there a heaven and is there a hell? Is he a good being, or is he kind of an indifferent being like the deists believe? Is he an evil genius being? Or, who is God in his heart? Does he protect us? Does he inspire us? Does he redeem suffering? Does he help us in our times of need? Is he conditioned to look at us from a point of view that's very pessimistic or optimistic? We don't know. By applying science to the God proposition, it won't work. Science can get you really close to a super intelligent, uncaused being, but it can't tell you who he is.
Well, that would be similar to dealing with any human being. I can say this is a Homo sapiens. I can take a look at the DNA that's present. I can take a look at the stature and all the rest and identify somebody as a human being. But that doesn't mean I know who that person is.
Absolutely, and that's why we need Jesus Christ. I mean, I had a guy once at Georgetown. I asked him, why have you come to this retreat? And he said, if general relativistic considerations proceed back to a singularity, then I think there's ample evidence for a God. I said, well, that's good. Well, why'd you come on the retreat? And he goes, it's the Jesus thing. I don't get it. If we can, actually through science or philosophy prove or have enough evidence to sufficiently establish the existence of God, why do we need Jesus? I said, it's the heart. It's the who. We don't know the who from science, and we can't. So now we've got Jesus who comes into the world. And the reason that Jesus comes into the world is to reveal the heart of God, to reveal the love of God, to reveal the fact that God loves us so much that He actually want to come into our reality and reveal Himself to us, show us the way to heaven, a heaven which really does exist, and that He is a God who protects and inspires and guides and loves and redeems suffering and takes the pain of suffering away in the next afterlife, etc. We need those questions to be answered, and it so happens, and the reason I wrote this book is that science now is beginning to show exactly that. Jesus is the one. He is the one who I'm going to come right out and say is the risen one. I'll talk about that relative to the Shroud of Turin and what we know today. I think we can have, from the scientific evidence for the tilma of Guadalupe, it's just absolutely remarkable. And the miracle of the sun at Fatima is doubly absolutely a miracle and just marvelous in terms of its scientific credibility. And then, of course, 7,000 healings that have been examined by the Lourdes Medical Commission, some of which are absolutely impossible to explain in terms of any natural causation. And so all of a sudden we're starting to get these revelations where science, far from being antagonistic to Christian religion or Jesus Christ Himself, is now giving us evidence for His resurrection and passion on the shroud, is also giving us these Eucharistic miracles that we can talk about, which show that, His presence in the Holy Eucharist. Of course, the Marian miracles, which not only validate Mary and her place in the economy of salvation, but also validate Jesus, because, of course, this is who she's pointing to. So when we start looking at that, this is a fantastic new development that has taken place, and I wanted everything to be under one cover. So I wrote this book to give you the latest and greatest scientific evidence that's now out there for the shroud and the resurrection of Jesus on it, for the Holy Eucharist, for Mary, and for Mary's place in our economy of salvation, and much, much more. I do not ignore the historical evidence as well, the historical evidence for the resurrection and so forth, and the historical case that can easily be made for the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, or the historical case that can be made for Mary. On the other hand, though, what we really need to do is take that science seriously, from my point of view, for two reasons. Number one, our young people put so much faith in science. They actually trust science as the one place to get truth. Well, if science and faith coincide almost perfectly in this regard, and the science is really excellent, and the peer-reviewed studies underlying it is excellent, then all of a sudden it starts occurring to them, well, wait a minute. Well, maybe faith should have a similar kind of validatability and validation. Maybe, what we're talking about here is that everything that Jesus said might well be true. The way to true happiness and to moral integrity, the way to heaven, is really to follow Him. Maybe all of that is right. This is not some Dawkins-like myth. This is actually reality, and not only do we have history validating it, the church in her authority and apostolic witness testifying to it, but now science is actually getting into the act in a most profound way that I can explain with respect to the various, the shroud and the miracles that I've mentioned tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, something that when you mentioned earlier Soren Kierkegaard, mm-hmm. who had said, you just have to make a leap of faith. Mm-hmm. It was important to remember that he was writing that at a time when mostly philosophers and university professors were mm-hmm. claiming to come up with natural ways to explain away the miraculous.
Yeah.
They dismissed the miraculous. They dismissed, the reality of what Christ had done. And in many ways, it's because they weren't really doing science.
No.
And
it was merely established on the basis of opinion. And when science got into the act, science is the best case for miracles that you can get in today's, language for today's, not just younger people, but for today's scientists. I mean, today, look at scientists. Right across the board, you've got 51% who declare themselves to be believers in God or a higher transcendent power. Only 21% are agnostic and 20% atheists. Then a Pew survey, this is a large Pew survey that was done in the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And the Pew survey found that 66% of young scientists believe in God or a higher transcendent power. Only 15% are agnostic and 15% atheists. The doctors today, and I'm convinced it's because of miracles and the possibility of scientifically investigating miracles, 76% of doctors proclaim themselves to be believers in God or a higher transcendent power today. 2/3 of them practice their religion, which is astonishing, one of the highest in all professions. And at the same time, only 12.5% are agnostic and 11.2% are atheists. And 73% of them believe in miracles, both past and present. So something has changed. The whole landscape has changed. And now science is not only validating Christ, the Eucharist, Mary, but miracles themselves. It's gotten into the point of course, you can't have an absolute validation for a miracle. I mean, a scientific validation for a miracle, because science describes observable facts, and miracles are, beyond, observable facts. They are transcendent causation. But what science can do is it can show you that naturalistic explanation in every respect that we know it, from the highest realms of cosmology to the minutest particles, everything that we know about natural causation will not explain, let's say, this event of Pierre de Ruyter's healing at Lourdes, the miracle of the sun at Fatima, or certainly the Eucharistic miracles where we see living heart tissue literally growing out of a consecrated host from the upper left ventricle of the heart, which is literally integrated in an interplay on the level of the thin filaments of the myofibrils, which means that there's like a few microns of separation in the weave, and there's literal interpenetration between the two vastly different substances, right? The crushed, wheat, germs, and of course the filaments from the heart tissue itself. So you put that together and you say, well, how are you going to explain that? It's very, very difficult to explain. And under electron microscopy, you can see this connection, which, by the way, the two Polish scientists, histopathologists, who actually worked on that, basically claimed this is, there's no way that we have any technology today that can produce that kind of interpenetration of two vastly different substances, one living, one not living, put together in an interpenetration. We don't have any machine that can do that from NASA or any place else. So it's almost like it's beyond fraud. So these things, it's science that's getting into the act. And again, when you look at that, you start saying, well, that's not going to work. This natural explanation, this scientific explanation, you just go right down the list and you say, well, fresh out of explanations, maybe supernatural causation will have to be admitted to explain this thing. We talk about the particle, the particles that were emitted in a very strong particle fluence from, for example, the body of the Shroud man, and we're very convinced that a particle fluence of 2 times...
And by shroud, you're talking about the Shroud of Turin.
The Shroud of Turin, exactly. So that, you can have, for example, we can establish pretty clearly from various kinds of evidence, the fluorescing on the shroud, even the carbon the errors in the carbon dating are explicable by these particles, the neutrons in this case, coming out of it, which I can explain in detail in a moment. But that particle fluence, it's what's causing the image, right? So the positively charged particles of protons and deuterons that come to the uppermost surface of the fibrils, this particle radiation does not leave any ion tracks. So you can tell very clearly that it is something like a low temperature radiation that's not going to leave ion tracks or destroy or scorch, right, the perish. Like high frequency ultraviolet radiation would do such a thing, but not in the case of this perfect three-dimensional photographic negative image. And I mean three-dimensional, like an MRI, three-dimensional photographic negative image on a non-photographically sensitive cloth, and including imaging from inside the body. Only way you're going to do that is with particle effusion that comes from the body as a whole. And of course, there's so many places on the cloth, on the shroud cloth, where the cloth did not touch the body. This is not a contact image. And by the way, even if it was a contact image, you would have to have some intermediary substance. No. There's no substance that produced this image. There's no dyes, no rubs, no paints, no vapors, no scorching, nothing like that. It's very, very delicate etching. So precise and so delicate that you can use a VPA image analyzer from NASA and actually produce a three-dimensional statue, a bronze statue, which, by the way, in Orange County, where I'm from, they have the Shroud experience there. People who are there can take a look at that bronze statue, the VPA image analyzer that discovered the interior imaging as well as the three-dimensional imaging on the shroud. There's only one way we can explain all 46 image enigmas, blood enigmas, and cloth enigmas. And what is that? Particle radiation. You had to have affluence of protons, deuterons, and neutrons. And that would include affluence of 2 times 10 to the 18th. That's a lot of particles that were emitted right down the center of mass of the body. They come out of the body, both in the dorsal part, the back part, and the frontal part. And not only do they emanate these particles, but we can actually tell for how long the fluence lasted, for 1/10,000th of a second. We know exactly what 2 times 10 to the 18th particles, protons, deuterons, and neutrons are. That's exactly 1/10 billionth of the particles in the shroud man's body. We also know that that body as a whole would have to disappear afterwards, which I can explain very briefly if I'm not getting into too much detail. Mm-hmm. But science is unveiling these things. It's the most remarkable thing in the world. What happens, if you look at the shroud, it's not just this the most unique image in the world that is emblazoned on a cloth that's the most scientifically investigated historical artifact by far in history. You look at that and you go, well, the image itself is crazy and will require a source of fissioning, which I will just briefly say here, that's going to be a supernatural cause. There is no source of energy to cause fissioning throughout that body that will produce that fluence of neutrons, protons, and deuterons. No source of it in a limestone tomb, on a cloth, in a body, not even close. You're going to have the supernatural cause of fissioning to begin with. That supernatural cause is now going to be complemented by those blood stains. And what is so interesting about those blood stains? Well, first of all, they're blood. Let's face facts. This is not, the Walter McCrone hour where, this is red dye or ochre, nothing like that. Hey, all these blood stains, over 100 blood stains on this shroud are perfect, even with the edges intact, and even, the contraction halos, when blood is drying, right, it leaves behind a little halo in the path of the contraction. And this blood stain is perfectly attached to the shroud. By the way, it has human immunoglobulins, human hemoglobin, human whole blood, in addition to the AB blood type, and some other features like you can see a creatinine and ferritin mixture, which synthesis only happens under a very heavy polytrauma, right? So the guy had been tortured and the blood stains all over the shroud portray this torture. And in fact, going even further than that, you can tell that there is a serum plasma separation on the shroud, on the vertical axis, on the y-axis. So you can just see that the man had been hanging for a long time to get that this particular serum separation. Now, why do I go into all this detail? Because those blood stains, that we know that the radiation that emitted from the body, the particle radiation that emitted from the body, it occurred around 36 hours after the body had been placed into the shroud. So just in that time. So between, rigor mortis and, of course, the exuding of basically fluids from the body in the form of decay. So it's got to be right in that 36-hour region. Now, what's so interesting is the blood, of course, on the man's body, except for a little bit of postmortem bleeding, the blood on that body is going to be what? It's going to be dried. And dried blood is not going to transfer perfectly with edges intact and contraction halos onto a shroud. That's just not going to happen in any naturalistic way. So how did it happen? It's the same particle fusion. So just imagine now that these particles, they're hitting the blood. The neutrons, of course, will go through the blood and turn the blood bright red when the blood should be, after 2,000 years, black. But in point of fact, you can see that the particle fluents, the protons and deuterons, they're building up, causing radiation pressure between the skin and the blood. And then suddenly, when it hits that threshold at 1/10,000th of a second, whap! These blood stains, the blood is warmed up, right? So it's going to go transfer, because all the particles that are flowing from the body carry momentum with them. So they're going to take the blood particles and transfer them perfectly, including the edges and the contraction hills, right onto the shroud. Because the blood's warmed up, it'll embed itself into the shroud. Now, here is the problem, and where we really get to supernatural causation. Because at that point, that moist blood, if that body stays in that shroud even a microsecond after the transfer is made, the warmed up blood will stick again on the skin. And this time, what will happen is you'll get some blood sticking on the skin, some sticking on the cloth. If somebody, let's say the apostles were sneaky and went in and tried to take the shroud off the body and claim that the body was gone, they would have had to have taken it off by some human or mechanical means, right? What is that going to do? It's going to produce segmenting, fragmenting, smearing of every kind, and flecking, and all these blood stains that are perfectly transferred to the cloth are going to be highly imperfect. Some of them are going to be almost indistinguishable. How come then we got perfect blood stains? Because the body wasn't there anymore. In other words, 1/10,000th of a second after the flop onto the cloth and the perfect transfer of the blood, like Frodo's ring, that body's got to disappear. And of course, that is a real problem for the first law of thermodynamics. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. Now, we know from the gospel, narratives, that the body reappears in a transphysical form outside the tomb after the resurrection. But what we can determine, and what science can determine, is the high likelihood that that body disappeared almost instantly, 1/10,000th of a second after the blood transfers were made. So with, fissioning happening in this, you've got resurrection writ large all over this thing. It is the most amazing relic we have. And who's doing this? It's the scientists. You'd say, well, wait a minute, the scientists, they did a really crazy thing. They basically dated the shroud. This is obviously a carbon dating that was done in 1988. Dated the shroud to between 1260 and 1390. So how could that shroud be real? That dating is completely wrong and has been debunked several times by several different methods. But the first thing to remember is we've got 4 other dating tests now that are non-carbon dated, and it's science that is doing this. So we now have a wide-angle X-ray scattering test dating the shroud between 55 to 74 AD. That is significant, mid-1st century. Spinning distance easily to the crucifixion of Jesus within very acceptable margins of error. We had Giulio Fanti and his team at Italian National Labs doing a Fourier transformed infrared spectroscopy, a Raman laser spectroscopy, mechanical compressibility and tension test, dating the shroud to 90 AD, of course, plus or minus acceptable range of 120 years or so. So again, mid-1st century BC. We have pollen grains anyway that are embedded in the shroud and flowers on top of the body from the shroud. And these flowers and these pollen grains are literally indigenous to northern Judea and Jerusalem, the Syrian region. And 13 of them are never found anywhere beyond Judea, northern Judea and Jerusalem. And on top of that, the flowers that are sprinkled all over are indigenous as well, that are on the body there. And these have been, classified by very well-respected palynologists. Well, that has two consequences. The very probable origin place has got to be northern Judea and Jerusalem. The shroud had to have been there for at least 200 to 300 years minimum, because of course 3/4 of the pollen grains are from that region. The largest proliferation by far from northern Judea and Jerusalem. Now, why is that so important relative to the carbon dating? If that shroud originated let's say the shroud is 700 years old, and it originated sometime between 1260 and 1390. Let's just say 1300 it originates. I don't think so, because of course we have Jacques de Chardonnay, and what does he say about it? I've got the shroud, the provenance of the shroud, the established provenance of the shroud is already starting in the 1300s. And then we know where it went from there. We know it was in Chambéry, France after Liry, France. We know that it went to Turin, Italy after that. So if the shroud is only 700 years old, then we should only have pollen fossils from France and from Italy. But no, we have many more pollen fossils. In fact, that's the minimum number of pollen fossils. What we see on the shroud, in actuality, as well as the flowers, we see that there is a huge collection of indigenous pollen fossils from northern Judea, et cetera. Let's say the shroud had to be minimum of 200 years, 300 years in Jerusalem, northern Judea. We know from a proliferation of other pollen fossils from Edessa, Turkey, which very crossroads area where the Mendelian was that gave rise to the change in iconography, et cetera. We are very sure from that the shroud had been there, and the studies of Paul Vignon are very good. But what's interesting is the number of pollen fossils. Well, it's got to be another 100 or 200 years in Edessa, Turkey, Constantinople, Turkey, another 100 to 200 years worth to get the indigenous pollen grains from there. Let's start adding this thing up. Now, 200 plus 200 plus 100, that's 500 years. We've got, the age of the shroud has to be a minimum of 500 years older than 700 AD. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't even explain those flowers and pollens. Anyway.
So what I'm drawing from this is you believe that the resurrection really happened.
Yeah, I do. I believe it for historical reasons, and I believe it because, of course, the authority of the church and the apostolic witness say it. But at the very same moment, I think there's terrific scientific evidence for it on the Shroud of Turin.
Well, there's another scientific realm that we have to deal with, which is that we're out of time for this section. And you know a lot about time.
Yeah, I do.
So we're going to take a break. If you want to find out more about this topic and the other related issues, you can go to magiscenter.com. M-A-G-I-S, that's magiscenter.com. And you can also go to your magisai.com, and of course get the Magis AI app on your phone for a very good price. As the son of a used car salesman, I like the word free. So that's a good thing. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Want to get some of your questions and comments, so please stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about some important elements of the Shroud of Turin, the evidence that science offers for its authenticity and that divine explanation of the phenomena of the Shroud of Turin are pointing toward the resurrection of Jesus, and it's all laid out in this book called Christ, Science, and Reason, What We Can Know About Jesus, Mary, and Miracles. It's written by our guest, Father Robert Spitzer of the Society of Jesus, PhD. It is available at ewtnrc.com, and it is item number 7430. And again, and you know, one of the nice things about getting this book is you can read the information that Father gave, but you don't have to read it as fast as he talks. You can read it at your own pace and take in, because that's a lot of information that you have at your fingertips. But you can get the same information and more about the Eucharistic miracles, miracles associated with the Marian apparitions, and other points of history, as well as the miraculous, and to take a look at that and take that in at your own pace and be able to start bringing this kind of information up and letting people know there is another kind of evidence available. Not only faith, but science also points us toward Jesus and teaches us a lot about him. And that is really worth having. Now, we're ready for some questions?
I am.
Let's start off with Thomas in Tennessee. Thomas, what can we do for you this evening? What question do you have for Father?
Yes, Father. I have just one more question about the shroud for Father Spitzer. Father, could you comment on the recent geographical discoveries connected to the shroud, the DNA discoveries?
Yes, there are several discoveries that have been made. Part of that is from the weave and the texture of the shroud, and also some DNA that looks like it comes from India. And so some people have suggested, well, maybe this fabric, really originated in India. That is absolutely, without a doubt, not true. This shroud definitely comes from Jerusalem. The pollen evidence alone and the flower evidence alone shows us. There's not a single pollen grain from India that I'm aware of. I'm sure there isn't one, otherwise it would have been listed in the comprehensive list of Max Fry and Emanuela Marinelli and others who have done, and very competent palynologists in Israel that would tell you that India is not the place of the shroud's origin. Now, it is true, though, that this could have been a very expensive fabric. It could have been manufactured in India. And of course, Joseph of Arimathea, let's just say he was a wealthy man or wealthy enough to afford this. Jerusalem was kind of on the track of many different kinds of traveling caravans, right, that would have come from, maybe India or other places where you could get exotic and very well, this is a very well constructed, very beautiful linen fabric, no question about it. So maybe the shroud could have been originally something fabricated in India, but that doesn't seem to be likely. There may have been in the exchange Indian traders from India that could have handled it. That might explain the DNA. Also, there might have been, Indian fabricators that were living all over the Middle East. I mean, this is a very cosmopolitan area. So there could be a million reasons, but did it originate in India? No way. you would have, all kinds of pollen grains that would manifest that it did. And, DNA can be transferred by mere handling, by, perspiration falling, by, any one of a number of things. And of course, could we find some sweat or, indications of, for example, the fluids or the oils in, one's hands handling this that could have been from an Indian person? Absolutely. So I don't want to disdain everything. I think the DNA readings are probably pretty good. But when you look at the sheer proliferation of DNA, from other handlers that clearly are from Jerusalem, they're clearly also from Edessa, Turkey, and all the places that we talked about, relative to the pollen grains, it's much more likely that the shroud started in Jerusalem, was probably in the Jerusalem area until around 500 or so, maybe 400 or so before it goes over to Edessa, Turkey. It remains in Edessa, Turkey for quite a while, where it is folded up into a frame, and then it's paraded around. Just the face on the shroud is paraded around in Edessa, and that's where the proliferation of those pollen grains from that area are found. It's on the face part, and we can now see under ultraviolet light, we can actually see the places where the shroud was creased and then pressed into the frame so that the rest of the body wouldn't be showing but only the face. So again, we are pretty sure that the Mandylion is the shroud, and you could see the changes in the iconography that happened prior to Edessa and the change of iconography in Edessa. Jesus is portrayed as a Roman, like a round face and very short haircut, no beard, etc. Whereas after Edessa, Turkey, we see not only the elongated Semitic face, we not only see the long hair, the beard that's trimmed just like a Semite, etc. We see in the Mandylion pictures and the change in the iconography, for example, Jesus, or the shroud man, let's say, was punched in the face very clearly, and the punch lands right above his right eyebrow. And this causes a little contusion and an uplifting of the right eyebrow. And so all of a sudden we see this contusion, this feature on the icons coming out of Edessa, and it starts getting copied again and again in other places. Mm-hmm. But the origin is there, and of course we see that like almost looks like a square, but it has no top on it, like an empty box scar that's above the nose of the shroud man, who I obviously believe is Jesus Christ. But we can see that very clearly. Again, it's in the iconography. So it went to Edessa. Then after Edessa, what happened was the Emperor of Constantinople just wanted that shroud. And he had heard about the Mandylion being there. So he laid siege to Edessa and told the king of Edessa, hey, I'm going to give you a huge amount of gold here to give me that shroud, or I'm going to lay siege to you till the whole city just rots underfoot. So, of course, the king of Edessa said, okay, you can have it, for the gold. So the shroud goes off to Constantinople. We know that from the pollen grains as well, but we also know it from the testimony of Robert de Clary. Robert de Clary went to the Cathedral of St. Mary Blachernay. And when he got there to that cathedral, he says, I can testify that this was not just the Mandylion. It is the entire burial cloth of Jesus. I saw it laid out with the front part, and he didn't call it the dorsal part, but the back part of the shroud. And he describes what is clearly the Shroud of Turin in very clear detail. And we have other testimonies. Then suddenly we know in the Fourth Crusade, the shroud disappears from Constantinople. And it appears like 5 generations later, it appears in Liry, France, when Geoffroy de Charnay declares that he has it. So about 120 years later, suddenly he says, Geoffroy de Charnay said, I've got that shroud. Now, a lot of people have to speculate at this point, because remember, the Pope had sanctioned anybody with really terrible penalties that if you are stealing icons or stealing relics from Byzantium, the
Constantinople.
Constantinople, if you were stealing those things, trouble for you, and including even, some really severe penalties.
Yeah.
So the point, of course, is no one's admitting to anything. But what a lot of historians think is that a leader of the Fourth Crusade called Othon de la Roche, he basically takes the shroud from Constantinople and he brings it up and he delivers it to what I'll call the fifth generation ancestor of Jeanne de Vergy. Now, Jeanne de Vergy is the spouse of none other than Geoffrey de Charnay. So in other words, it seems like Othon de la Roche swiped the shroud, obviously, didn't tell anybody about it because of the penalties from the Pope, and it goes up to Illyrie, France, and then later, they reveal that they have it, and the actual provenance, the established provenance of the shroud continues. But I say this...
And part of this story, too, is that there are a lot of Christians who really needed to learn more about the seventh commandment, thou shalt not steal.
Yes, they were stealing a lot of things.
Yes.
And those fine crusaders,
they light-fingered. We have another question, though, I want to get to.
Sorry.
Let's start off, let's go to that question. Adriana in Florida, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, what can we do for you?
My question is regarding the holy face of Monopello, and how is it connected with the shroud? Is there any blood that matches? What studies have been done regarding the holy face of Monopello?
Well, the holy face of
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. The holy face of Montepello does have some similar facial features to the shroud face and to the face cloth of Oviedo that I'll explain in a moment. The main thing here to remember is that we don't have any real scientific tests that have been done on the face cloth of Montepello. And because of the absence of that, we really don't know much about it, its origin. We haven't done any kind of a dating test, let alone, I don't even think there's much blood and blood analysis that can be scientifically tested. So it's a real mystery to me. I just can't comment on it. There's just no real scientific tests that are public. Whereas with the face cloth of Oviedo and with the Shroud of Turin, there are a ton of tests that have been done on those. So if I might just drift, and since you asked the question, into the face cloth of Oviedo, I'll do that. The main thing just to remember, let me just explain, why was the shroud carbon dated improperly? What happened? As I just said, the reason is because of a neutron fluence. We know a neutron fluence means an effusion of neutrons coming out of the body, all places in the body. Now, neutrons are what turn the blood on the shroud bright red, right? So if you look at the shroud's blood stains, they're all bright red. Whereas if you're in the medical profession, you know that blood goes from bright red to dark red to brown into black very quickly in the open air. So all the stains should be black, but they're not. Why? Because if you irradiate blood stains with neutrons and then put it out in ultraviolet light, right, where it's like in an exhibition, the sunlight in an exhibition, it'll turn all those blood stains instantly bright red. So we see neutrons too in the fluorescing of the cloth. We know that neutrons will make the fluorescence in the cloth go up. Significant. Fluorescence just means shining an ultraviolet light on it and looking at the intensity of the reflection, which we call fluorescence. Now, the closer you are to the body, of course, the neutron density would be higher closer to the body and lower further away from it. And now you can see very clearly in the pictures of the fluorescence imaging that was done by many good Princeton physicists and others. You can see that it follows high intensity near the body, low intensity on the edges. And you can also see a variety of other signs. Now let's go back to the dating. And this is going to become important because of the face cloth of Oviedo in just a moment. So what do we think happened? Well, linen cloths are made of cellulose, and cellulose has nitrogen-13, which is a normal nitrogen element, but it has a lot of nitrogen-14, which is an isotope. That isotope has an extra neutron in it. Now, there's lots and lots of indigenous N14 in a linen cloth. So what happens? The neutrons are flowing out, and they are now bombarding the indigenous N14. Let me give you a very common chemical formula. Nitrogen-14 plus a neutron yields carbon-14, C14 plus a proton. What is measured in a carbon-14 dating test? Carbon-14. The higher the density of carbon-14, the younger the date will appear. Now, let's take a look at the shroud. We know that an 8-centimeter sample was taken from the shroud near the foot area on the right side, right next to the edge. So it's really at kind of a very distant point from the body. This should have, neutrons, of course, will influence it, but not to the same extent that near the body. You'd probably get a carbon-14 dating test 2,000 years into the future because the carbon-14 density would be so high. I'm not kidding you. But we don't have that measurement yet, but we will in the next scientific testing. But right now, let's look at what happened at that little 8-centimeter sample taken from the edge. We see a date that's closest to the body of 1410. But then systematically, it was divided, the sample's divided into 12 parts for different laboratory examination. And so as you look at that, you can see that it's varying, it's going down 31 years per centimeter. So 8 centimeters, you can say, aha, 250-year differential more or less, 32 years per centimeter. And then you go to the date that's measured by the carbon dating that's closest to the edge of the shroud. What's the date? 1150, 250 years earlier. This is exactly what we would expect. We have a software called Monte Carlo N particle. This is like a Monte Carlo, it's a mathematical test of scattering. The Monte Carlo N particle software. That will tell you what the likely neutron emissions and density would be if an effusion of neutrons of 2 times 10 to the 18th emerge from the center of that body. What does Monte Carlo predict will be the dating of the 8-centimeter sample nearest to the shroud? Around 1400. What does it predict it should be at the edge of the shroud? About 1150 with a 250-year differential. That carbon dating test could not possibly be valid. That's more than 2 standard deviations from the mean in that sample. So, I mean, to begin with, Tristan Casabianca found this already very clearly and said this sample can't date anything. There's a glaring systematic error.
Yeah, and yeah. We've got another dating problem.
Yeah, the end of the show. Okay, yeah. Sorry. But I just want to point out, we can establish that neutrons cause that dating error. Yeah. And secondly, when the face cloth of Oviedo, which has, by the way, 120 points of congruence between the face on the shroud, blood stains, the pleural edema fluid stains on the face of the Shroud of Turin and on the face cloth of Oviedo. Those 2 cloths had to touch the same face, and we have a provenance of the face cloth of Oviedo going back to 616. Now, what the problem is the face cloth of Oviedo got dated to 700 AD. And so you say, well, how can that happen?
Yeah.
Neutrons, the same thing. It's a linen cloth. It's 5.5 inches more further away from the shroud. It's rolled up in a place by itself, probably on the right shelf.
Yeah. Well, we really are out of time.
Oh, okay. Sorry to say.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Again, you can read about more of the detail in his book, Science, Reason, and Faith, Discovering the Bible and New Proofs for the Existence of God, Contributions of Contemporary Physics and Philosophy. All this is by Father Spitzer, and you can get it at EWTN-RC. Thank you for all this work and for being with us. And may Almighty God bless you all and keep you and cause His face to shine upon you, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Make sure you also watch Father Spitzer's Universe, and you'll see a lot more of the same information in detail. God bless you all, and God bless you, Father. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Mitch, for the opportunity.